Hello and welcome to the Whirly Bloke channel. Today I'll be reviewing these 030 OLED goggles from SkyZone. Now if you've watched my channel before, you'll know that I don't do the shouty YouTube thing. It's just not me. But these goggles are fan-flipping-tastic and I mean really, really good. And it came as a total surprise. You see, I ordered these a while ago when there was no stock, so they just took ages to arrive. And because I've been distracted by these puppies, they've been sitting on my desk unopened for quite a while. But the other week, I needed some goggles to go flying, and the batteries for my trusty Dominator V3s all needed charging. So I grabbed these SkyZone 03 OLEDs to see what they're all about. And I just wasn't expecting them to be so fantastically good. Now, goggles, like nothing else, are extremely personal and they're very difficult to review. These Dominator V3s were my first goggles that I bought about 3 years ago, and I've tried loads of others, some with a much better spec, but I just like the Dominators. And combined with this OWL RX diversity module, they just work for me all day and every day. And because we're all different shapes, the fit and the eye spacing on goggles is different for everyone, which makes it even more personal. But these SkyZones, they're just so comfortable. They're light and the image quality is, well, just awesome. And I'm going to go over the spec and the features of these and show you some footage, but it just doesn't do them any justice. If you want some, I suggest finding someone local to you that will let you try theirs out. There's a few little niggles that I'll come on to later, but for me, these are now my new everyday analog goggles. So these are the third generation SkyZones. The 02s are still available in the £200, $250 price bracket, and they're great goggles for the price. And these 03s come in two basic flavours, OLED and standard. That's the 030 and the 03S. And they come in a huge range of beautifully finished colours, metallic and camouflaged. And this is the orange. So there's pretty much something in here for everyone's taste. And these are firmly placed to compete with the FatShark HDO and the newer HDO OLEDs. But these are a little bit cheaper in the £350, $400 price bracket. But check out the links in the description for the latest prices. Comes with two sizes of faceplate with very comfy faux leather foam pads, and I use this narrow one, and for me, zero light leakage. Very good, and they're extremely comfortable, the best I've tried. You get this nice fat head strap like the aftermarket ones for FatSharks, and it's got this little pocket if you want to hold the battery in there. And it all comes in this rather nice hard carry case. You also get a bunch of cables like this. What we've got here, that's head tracking, those are AV, that's another AV lead, and you also get this power lead which has got an XT60, and you get a couple of 2 DVI dipole antennas. And these weigh about 250 grams, which isn't the lightest, but it's no problem. They're still pretty light. Especially when there's no battery and you've got your external battery out of the way, tucked in your back pocket. Now down on the side here is the power button. You plug your battery in and long press and release to turn the goggles on. And you can short press to turn the fan on and off. And you long press it again to turn it off. And I know people have been asking FatShark for this feature for a long time, but actually I'm not really a fan. Even though it's pretty unlikely, it just feels a bit unsafe to be able to accidentally turn them off when you're fiddling around with these buttons up here. But it's one of those things that I'm bound to get used to. Now this fan does two jobs. It keeps all the electronics in here cool, and it stops the lenses fogging up. And you can set the fan speed to between 1 and 16 in the settings. And unlike FatShark's, it's internally wired, so there's no nasty balance lead and connector to fiddle about with. And on the top, you've got 6 multifunction buttons that allow you to select the band, the channel, start stop recording, the mode, and there's a channel search there. On the bottom here is the power connector. That just plugs in there, just like a DJI set of goggles. And you've got the head tracker output. Never used one of those. The IPD adjustment sliders give a range of 57.5 to 69.5, and that works great for me, but I find these sliders a little bit sticky. They work perfectly fine, but they just don't feel that positive. Now, you can power this on anything from 7 to 26 volts, which is 2 to 6S, and that's great because it means I can use all these old tired 4S LiPo batteries that I've got sitting on the shelf that I just don't use for flying anymore. It's quite nice. And on this side, we've got an HDMI input, we've got an AV in, an AV out. There's a USB connector there for doing your firmware updates, and down here is the SD card slot for the DVR. And just down here, we've got a 3.5mm headphone jack. Now, this thing on the front here is a forward-facing camera you can turn on and off by tapping the search button. It just means you don't have to lift your goggles up to see what's in front of you, because you can see in the displays. It's a nice, cute little feature, but I used it once, haven't used it again. Now, this has got a built-in 48-band diversity receiver with a signal strength indicator on the display, which is great. And this strip here is an LED strip for nothing more than looking cool. And you can do all your Cylon impressions with that. There's loads of different patterns you can set in the configuration. It's a novelty, yes, but it does look great. So let's move on to the important part, the spec and the optics. The display has got a resolution of 1024 by 768, which is a 4:3 aspect ratio. And SkyZone have chosen not to offer 16:9, which I think is actually a really good idea. Because all that happens is the top and the bottom of the image just gets cropped and you're just losing image information. You can still use 16:9 FPV cameras, it will just look a little bit squished. And the SkyZone spec says the field of view of these is 35 degrees, which is a little bit smaller than the HDOs, which are 37. But to be honest, it doesn't feel restricted to me at all. The extra image information offered by the OLED display just simply makes up for it. Again, it's another good decision by SkyZone, because I think a massive field of view isn't everything. You get fuzzy borders the wider it gets, and I had some HD2s for a while and they had a 50-degree field of view, and I hated the blurry edges. I found it just really distracting. You can use FatShark compatible diopter correction lenses in here. You just slide them in and they are a tight fit. In fact, I can't get these out, but they're not going to waggle around or move about. The built-in diversity receiver is pretty good, but you'll need to fit better antennas than the stock ones. I generally find a couple of Omnis at different angles work best, unless I'm planning to do longer range when I'll swap one out for a patch that's got gain. But I haven't yet found the best combination for these. And as you'll see from the DVR footage, the receiver doesn't seem to work so great behind big, fat, wet trees. It may just be that I haven't got the right antenna combination. But my Dominators and the Owl RX are really dialed in, and this does perform a lot better. In some ways, having a built-in receiver is easier, and arguably it saves you a bit of money, but it's a shame there's no option for a separate FatShark compatible module. But I have heard rumours on the grapevine SkyZone may be working on a detachable external module bay, and that would be perfect. The DVR footage looks great, there's no weird frame drops or judder, but since it's using H.264 codecs, the files are going to be larger than you'd expect. It's about a meg per minute. So make sure you've got a large and fast SD card, at least class 10 and 32 gig to be safe. And another neat feature is these don't record static. So If your FPV camera or quad isn't powered up, you can't stop recording. But more importantly, when you turn your quad off and the recording was on, it will auto stop recording, which is a nice, clever little feature. And it's also safe to power off the goggles while you're recording without losing any video. I tried this a few times and it just seemed to work fine. There's probably some big capacitor in here somewhere. And as you saw earlier, there's 6 buttons on top of the goggles, but they're all multifunction. And because we're generally trying to press these with the goggles on, there's a bit of a learning curve, but actually it comes pretty quickly. So if you long press the search button, you get to the channel scanner. A short press will start it scanning, and it'll automatically choose the strongest signal, but you can use the record and the mode button to manually select the one that you want. You get to the OSD config menu by long pressing the track button, and this is pretty comprehensive. This is the head tracking setup page, all sorts of stuff in here. Press the track button to move to the display setup page, and you can change the brightness, the contrast and so on. Next is the video setup. You can change cyclic and auto record, the max video length, record audio on and off, and choose to do a firmware update. Then we've got the OSD and the OLED setup. You can choose how long before the OSD turns off, the transparency and its position. And LED mode lets you change the LED patterns on the front of the goggles. And there's a sleep mode as well. Last up are the utilities. You can calibrate the OSD that shows the external battery voltage, change the fan speed, format the SD card, return to factory settings, and show the firmware version. After all that goodness, is there anything not to like? Well, there's a few little niggles that may be a problem for some of you. There's no 16:9 aspect ratio, but to be honest, I think most people are using 4:3 these days. And the field of view is smaller than most other goggles, but quite honestly, I didn't even notice with all the extra image information that OLED displays offer. Now, the big one is warranty. FatShark make a big thing about their excellent support and backup. But would we get the same from SkyZone? I've never tried contacting them, but let's just see how the community responds. And I'm not a massive fan of the power button on the side, but that seems to be a very personal thing, just like everything else on FPV goggles. And there's no external display to show you what channel or frequency you're on, like you've got with the module on the FatSharks and the channel display on the side of the DJIs. And these stock antennas, well, they aren't the greatest, but they work. So all in all, a fantastic pair of goggles that I've been using solidly for a few weeks now, and they are my daily drive for analog FPV. And a huge benefit is the extra confidence you get when you can see more detail. You can hit gaps and fly closer to things you probably keep clear of with a lesser pair of goggles. As always, thanks for watching, and if you found that useful, give me a thumbs up and leave a comment. And if it's your first visit, then please consider subscribing to the channel and hit the bell to get notified when I post a new video. I'll see you next time.